Yeah. We got completely missed.
Yeah. And now I see, we're supposed to have rain this week, but the probabilities aren't that high.
Yeah. Yep.
And I have a big wildflower garden project over at the West Minnehaha Rec Center.
Oh.
It's probably the biggest wildflower garden in the city.
Nice.
We have about 6,000 square feet or so. And doing okay. A little stunted. Some plants have suffered. Some plants have thrived. It's very surprising.
Oh. Some wildflowers are made for that.
Yeah. The rattlesnake master seems to love it. And lanceleaf coreopsis and big blue stem. Oh, they just seem to love it.
Oh, yeah.
Really relax and enjoy yourself.
Hi, Christine.
Yeah, another one. This is one of those guys where you can really start to enjoy what's happening in front of Walker's crowd, what they've got here in the landscape.
Hey, Al.
Hi, Christine.
Hello.
Lovely sweltering day we're having.
I found the darkest, shadiest corner of our house to sit in for this. Do we know, George, if we have any likely members of the public going to participate today?
With St. Thomas, I assume so. But we have not heard anything from anybody, so.
Yeah. St. Thomas is always very well organized.
Yes.
Hi, Barb.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Microsoft Teams hates my computer. Funny thing, it's a Mac.
Aha.
Folks, was Stu going to be at the meeting today?
He accepted. He said he was.
Okay.
So I hope so.
I don't think we have.
No, go ahead.
I don't think we have a quorum without him, do we?
Well, I also asked if David would show. He said he would put it on his calendar. So
Great. Not quite the same as agreeing to be there.
No.
You didn't hear me say that. Say, I know that you can do this in Zoom. Is it possible for a participant to share their screen?
Yeah, but we're not supposed to during meetings, though.
Oh, okay. Well, all I wanted to do was share the announcement about the What's Out There weekend.
Oh. I think we can make an announcement at the end.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to show the.
That's Charlie Birnbaum, right?
Well, yeah, he's the coordinator. Shoot, now I can't find it, so never mind.
Okay.
It's kind of been that kind of day, week.
I see that my friend Richard Airy is doing a bike tour.
He is. I think he's calling it the United Cities Bike Tour because that's what,
Horace Cleveland?
well, Cleveland called it, did a bunch of lectures all with the same title, and it had the phrase United Cities in it because of his attempt to encourage both cities to work together at developing parkways and boulevards in particular that would connect the two cities. I just read one paper in which he tried to suggest that it was crucial to have a river crossing, a bridge near Minnehaha Park. It only took until what, 1925.
Took Henry Ford to get that done.
Yeah. But I tell you, this project has been fascinating to combine architectural history, which, you know, is just sort of second nature after all those years at the archives, plus landscape architecture. It's a different vocabulary. It's a different way of looking at, and I'm fascinated by how differently I now look at a site.
So speaking of architecture and parks, I'm sure that you have devoured the latest issue of Ramsey County History magazine with its rather long article about 2 park bridges.
So it's a good thing we don't have visuals here because you would see how bright red and embarrassed I am. No, I have not yet seen them.
That must mean you're not a member.
That's correct, Paul. Should we move along from shaming Barb?
No, I think shaming Barb is a good place to start.
Thanks. Stu, by the way, hi Stu.
Hello.
I would like your phone number if I can have a quick phone chat with you when the meeting is over regarding What's Out There Weekend.
What's up, what?
What's Out There Weekend, the landscape architecture tour thing.
Oh, okay. You want my number now?
Well, if you don't mind.
No. 651-698-1845.
Wow. I haven't seen a 698 number since I worked at Hungry Minds, which was a year or two ago.
It wasn't too far away from us.
You know, they started on the east side of the street.
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Oh my God. This is a horrible place with apartments upstairs. And one year, shortly after he opened, the waterbed in the apartment just above the bookstore popped a leak all over the books.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Carrie Kimker. Is there a problem with I can't get into the meeting through Teams because I've been connecting for like 10 minutes.
We can hear you.
Yeah, well, I'm just on my phone, but I can't.
Oh, I see.
Oh, well, back all the way out and try again because sometimes
I did that twice, but I'll try it again.
Yeah, that has worked for me. And count to at least 10.
Okay.
Seems to be the magic computer number. Yeah, it was the first paid Hungry.
Wow. I must have seen you in there then.
Probably. Inside the dive next to Harry Larry's convenience store? Or was it across? Was it across the street where Patagonia is now?
No. I remember the very first location. I remember Harry Larry's.
I haven't thought about that or the Greasy Spoon.
Remember that too. So it's 3:31.
Well,
Right.
we gotta wait to make sure Terry gets in. Seeing as
I am, hello?
yeah,
I
can hear you.
This is for, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna have to do it on my phone. I can't get in through my iPad, so it'll be a little bit difficult, but we'll make it.
You'll be
So today is August 23rd, and welcome to the Heritage Preservation Commission meeting. My name is Terry Kimker. I am the chair of the commission. And the Heritage Preservation Commission reviews applications for projects at heritage sites or within the heritage districts of the city of St. Paul. The commission also serves as an advisory body to the mayor and the city council on municipal heritage preservation matters for the city. All documentation to be used for this meeting is available on the commission website at www.stpaul.gov/HPC, and no new documentation will be discussed or recognized at today's meeting. Notice of this meeting was posted in the legal ledger and sent to the St. Paul Citywide Early Notification System, or ENS. To sign up for ENS, please visit the city website at www.stpaul.gov. And if you have questions about the notice, please contact the HPC staff. During the meeting, please mute your microphones except when recognized by the chair to speak. You can unmute from your computer by pressing the microphone button or from your phone by pressing *6. After being recognized by the chair, commissioners and staff will need to state their name before speaking, and everyone else will need to state their name and address before speaking. All deliberation and voting will be done via roll call conducted by the chair, and staff will be monitoring microphones and muting participants as needed. So with that, I will do the roll call for attendance. Steve George, I understand, is not here today. Is that correct? Commissioner Bazat?
present.
Commissioner Douglas?
Here.
Hello. Commissioner Lupke? Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Hello. I know Commissioner Peroka is not going to be with us today. Commissioner Nelson?
I'm here.
Hello. And Commissioner McDonald?
Here.
Hello. And me. I'll try it one more time for Commissioner Lupke. Okay. We have an agenda for today. Can I have a motion and a second for the adoption of the agenda?
This is Commissioner Bazat, so move.
This is Nelson,
Thank you.
second.
Thank you. And we'll take a vote on that motion. Commissioner Bazat?
Aye.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
And Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted. Thank you. And are there any conflicts of interest today? Hearing none. Then our first item of business are the minutes for the meeting of July 26th. Are there any major edits needed on the submitted minutes? Commissioner Bazat?
None.
Commissioner Douglas?
None.
Commissioner Wagner?
No.
Commissioner Nelson?
Not that I know of.
Commissioner McDonald?
No.
Thank you. Then if the minutes are true and correct, is there a motion for approval of the minutes?
This is Bazat. I move approval.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I motion to approve.
Commissioner Douglas, you're seconding that motion? Commissioner Douglas?
Yeah, I made the motion, Leetta.
Yes, I motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are
I
you-
second.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and second for approval of the minutes. Commissioner Bazat, how do you vote on that motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
I'll abstain since I wasn't a part of those meetings.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
And I will vote in favor of that as well, in case my vote is needed. So our public meeting today is a public hearing for the University of St. Thomas new educational building. And I will ask for the staff presentation on that application.
This is George Gauze with staff. The University of St. Thomas proposes to construct a new science and arts education facility. Building size is approximately 130,000 square feet. Exterior building materials will consist of materials that are in place adjacent to St. Thomas at O'Shaughnessy and Owens Science Hall. At the HPC pre-application, which was held on June 14th, 2021, commissioners only had two comments. One was that they felt the building fits within the campus, and is the Casota stone still available, which I believe it was. So the height of the building will be 75 feet. Width will be approximately 245 feet. 130,000 square feet. Siding material, Casota stone. Window material will be a commercial low E window. Roofing material will be clay tile. So with new construction, we asked three questions. One, does the project conform with St. Paul Legislative Code, Chapter 74 standards? The design does meet the Legislative Code Chapter 74 standards. New building will correspond to other adjacent structures on the campus. The structure will maintain the harmony and continuity of the campus. The design is distinguishable as new, modern design while addressing the established continuity. The structure will relate to the other university buildings. Materials also correspond to those buildings. The roof line also corresponds to those buildings. Number two, question two, was the public informed about the HPC application and was there participation? Notice letters were sent out to property owners within 100 feet of the project property on August 9th, 2021, which gave a description and a map showing the location of the project. And these were unique owners. The letter did not go out to the university since they are the applicant. Notice and staff report and proposed plans were posted on the city website and sent out through the St. Paul Early Notification System, ENS, on August 3rd, 2021. We have not received any comments from the public or written testimony. Question number three, does the project adversely affect the program for preservation and architectural control under Code Section 73.06E? No, the design does conform to legislative code standards. Materials conform to what is found on the campus. The building elements, mass, and scale and fenestration all conform to the campus and to the Summit West Avenue design guidelines. So based on the draft resolution findings and 6 conditions in that resolution, staff recommends approval of construction of a new science and arts educational facility at the University of St. Thomas. Any questions?
Are there any questions for the commission from staff? Commissioner Bazat?
Yes. George, I have one request and one question. The request is, could you share on your screen the elevation presentation rendering for the building? I've got it pulled up if I can share my screen, that'd be fine. But I don't know how here. And then
And
while you're hunting for it, I mean, it might be nice to just have it in front of us if we have a conversation about it. And then are there separate design guidelines for the University of St. Thomas within the Summit West district nomination? I have it. I read through it. I couldn't find anything. But
the only thing I could find was under 74.37 C3 in the new construction guidelines, which says the College of St. Thomas presents cream color Catoosa stone buildings to the Summit Avenue streetscape. That's really the only mention of
Okay.
St. Thomas.
So there was nothing, yeah, I mean, I saw that too. There was nothing more detailed that I could find either. So, thank you. That was something about which I was curious. Thanks for pulling this up too. Ours is just that staff report, and that was easy to, but this is good too. It's just a good reminder of what we're looking at. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions for staff? Let me just run through the roll, just make sure we're not missing anybody here. Commissioner Bazat, any further questions for staff?
I have none, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Douglas.
Well, I was just wondering, is this the same architect that did the previous buildings that were designed, the most recent? Because it's very, it looks just like the buildings that exist on the St. Paul campus and the Minneapolis campus. I was just curious.
I would have to defer to the team who is on the call, and they could answer that question in a minute. So.
George, this is Greg Fenton with BWBR. I can take that question now if you'd like.
Okay.
BWBR, along with Robert A.M. Stern's office, we were not the architects of the previous adjacent buildings, nor in Minneapolis. I believe that was primarily led by Opus.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for staff? Commissioner Wagner?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
No, no questions, George. I thought your report hit the nail right on the head. The context is now the University of St. Thomas campus, and the proposal looks completely harmonious with that. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner McDonald, any questions for staff?
No questions.
Thank you. Then we will, there's no further questions. One more time for staff. We'll move on to the applicant presentation. And the applicants will have 15 minutes to present their application to the commission. And so please, whoever presenting on behalf of the university, if you please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Greg Fenton, again with BWBR Architects, located in St. Paul, Minnesota, on behalf of the design team, along with Jim Brummer, who is on the line representing the University of St. Thomas. We appreciate the opportunity to see you folks again for this significant project for the campus. We, as you recall, came in front of this commission in June with the pre-application review, and thank you for your comments. Thank you to George and staff for the recommendation. And then I also need to add that this project has overwhelming neighborhood support when presented in early summer, both to West Summit Neighborhood Advisory Council, or WSNAC, and the Mac Groveland land use as well as the general Mac Groveland Community Council. So if there could have been a standing ovation virtually, they were willing to do it for the university because of the benefit they saw for not only green space but shared use within the building with programs and so forth. As George had mentioned, we believe that the design certainly complements and belongs with the rest of the aesthetic of the South Campus, but does enhance the collegiate Gothic fabric of St. Thomas on the South Campus at the same time. I do want to make one clarification just for the record. We inadvertently labeled the slate tile clay tile on the material app slide of this presentation. It is indeed going to be slate tile to match the existing materials on the adjacent roofs. I don't know if there's if much more detail is need to be offered. Jim, I'll turn it over to you if you have any comments, but we're open to fielding any questions that the commissioners may have.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I'll make, and this has all been stated before, is, you know, our goal of the STEAM building is to provide a state-of-the-art learning facility that is collaborative, interdisciplinary, and inclusive. In doing so, we're aiming to attract top talent students and faculty and hope to accelerate our momentum toward being widely recognized as a preferred choice and a forward-thinking premier university. As indicated by the staff report and consistent with our architecture, the exterior of the building will maintain the harmony and continuity of the St. Thomas campus. The building elements, mass and scale all conform to the campus architecture and the heritage guidelines. And we look forward to the HPC's approval of this very significant project for the university. And again, welcome any questions from the commission.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for the applicant? Commissioner Bazat?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Douglas?
No, I do not have any.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
I have one, although we have no jurisdiction over what goes on inside the building. I recall, I think, at one of our earlier meetings, there was discussion of having some sort of historical presentation inside the building about the early days of the then college and Cass Gilbert's contribution. Do you know anything about where that may stand?
Yeah, I can. Jim Brummer with the University of St. Thomas. We are actively looking at ways to recognize Cass Gilbert's contribution to this part of campus. So we're working with our design team now to try to figure out what that solution might look like. We did salvage some materials from the building that was previously on this site, and looking for ways to also incorporate that into the interior building as some sort of recognition and opportunity to engage and teach.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Students, you know, they're very young. They won't appreciate the history unless somebody tells them about it. So I hope that works out well for you. That's all I have.
Chair, if I could piggyback on Commissioner Nelson's inquiry.
Yes, Commissioner Bazat, yes.
Commissioner Bazat, one of the other things that I know that we had mentioned, and some of us had actually done some research on it, was to commemorate and possibly throw out a suggestion to you about naming the hall after Father Theobald, who was graduated from the seminary and who was at the seminary at the time the Loris Hall dormitory was in operation. So it's possible he was there, but he went on post-graduation to found St. Peter Claver Church and create it as the social center that it is now. So we had mentioned that not just the architect, but some of the movers and shakers who came out of that era and, you know, were associated in that way and at that time with the building, with Loris Hall. So just wanted to throw that out there.
This is Commissioner Nelson.
Yep.
Pardon me, I just have to correct Commissioner Bazat a little bit. Father Theobald was the first.
Apologies.
Father Theobald was the first Black priest at St. Peter Claver. Claver was founded by Archbishop Ireland himself and Frederick McGee.
Right, and then Ireland assigned Theobald to St. Peter Claver.
Yes, some years later, not right away. The first priest was actually Polish. But we're getting off the subject.
Thank you. Always happy to learn or relearn.
Okay, any further questions for the applicant, Commissioner McDonald?
Oh, I have some comments. I'm a little ambivalent about the building to begin with, given the nature of the recent history of the site. I think the siting of the building is quite good. I guess I'm a little concerned that this forward-looking interior and the educational opportunities and forward-looking is wrapped in this mild collegiate Gothic revival style. I was wondering if the design team looked at other options that could have been more attuned with what's happening on the interior, but still fit in architecturally with the rest of the campus.
I'd be happy to take that. This is Greg Fenton with BWBR. Investigation was made. There was a strong beginning interest, however, with St. Thomas that the collegiate Gothic be studied and utilized in carrying out the general theme of the building. The significance of that style for this institution is significant, not only in terms of its education, but its brand. And so there was an importance conveyed from the university to us that that the aesthetic be carried on.
Well, thank you for the comment. I guess I'll still hold by my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Any further questions for the applicant? Let me just run through the roll one more time to make sure that we're not missing anybody there. Commissioner Bazat, any further questions for the applicant?
No, I have comments that I'll save for our discussion.
Thank you. Commissioner Douglas?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Nothing more?
Pardon me? Nothing more? Okay, thank you.
Nothing more.
Commissioner McDonald?
Nothing further.
Thank you. And George, I believe you stated that the staff did not receive any written testimony or comments on this application. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And we will now accept comments from the public.
Chair, if I
Yep.
could, this is Commissioner Wagner. You didn't run through my name in that
Oh,
last
I'm
call for
sorry.
questions or
I'm sorry.
comments.
Do you have?
I just
I'm
would-
sorry about that.
Being the other architect on the commission, I would just like to concur with Commissioner McDonald's comments. I would have maybe proffered those earlier, except since I wasn't there at the I think it was the June meeting, where the pre-design was first represented. I'm only going off of the one image that was sent in the current packet, but I would concur. I think it's an overly safe design, not meant to ruffle anybody's feathers, but not trying to put forward any real original design thinking that would build off the the collegiate architecture that's there, and again that it would say something about the activities that are going on inside. It does seem like an incredibly safe approach to this building, where I think something that could be collegiate Gothic fit in with the campus and be a little bit more forward thinking is very achievable, and might be maybe considered edgy by the University of St. Thomas administration, but I think that's what architects are there to do, which is to try to think forward and put ideas forward that challenge current notions, so that design continues to move forward rather than just stay in a sense of status. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. And again, my apologies for skipping over you the first time. Well, let me just run through the roll call one more time, just to make sure that there isn't any lingering comments or questions out there. Commissioner Bazak, any further questions or comments for the applicant?
Comments, yes. Questions, no. But anyway, at this point, I can say that I would echo and concur with the comments by Commissioners McDonald and Wagner regarding the design.
Thank you. Commissioner Douglas, any further questions for the applicant?
No, but I also concur with the comments from the other commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner, anything further?
Yeah, nothing further from me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson.
Nothing more.
Thank you. And Commissioner McDonald?
Nothing further.
Thank you. With that, then, we'll now accept comments from the public on this application. And the following rules will be used for the public testimony. Speakers should state their name and address for the record before beginning your presentation. All presentations must be confined to the topics of this application, and each speaker may speak only once. And speakers each have 5 minutes to address the commission. So are there any members of the public on this call who wish to speak to the application from the University of St. Thomas? One more time, are there any members of the public on this call who would like to speak to the University of St. Thomas's application? Okay, hearing none, then we will close the public hearing at this point. And I would ask for a motion and a second on the application. Is there a motion from the commissioners?
This is Commissioner Nelson. I'm glad to offer the motion that was suggested. It just so happens that I don't have it in front of me right this second.
Chair, I do. And just to get a conversation rolling, I will present the motion. I move to adopt the draft resolution which approves construction of the new Science and Arts Educational Facility in the University of St. Thomas, St. Paul campus, as per the findings of fact, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
This is Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you,
I second.
Commissioner Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. And with that, I will open the floor to Commissioner deliberation on that motion. Commissioner Bazat, do you have any comments or discussion on that activity?
Well, I do, to go back to the comments of Commissioners McDonald and Wagner, that was my initial impression, and it's remained that the other issue regarding the and I hesitate, so I'm hopeful DWBR folks, I won't be very articulate about this, but it isn't, and I recognize it isn't a rubber stamp. I think the arched windows kind of make it look like a chapel, but they're pretty cool. But that entire stretch of Summit Avenue then now becomes this monolithic, static stretch. And I was very much hopeful that the use of some other materials, if nothing else, as accent points or whatever, and perhaps a reflection back to Loris Hall, and as the two other commissioners have mentioned, a reflection of what happens inside that building. You have zero clue at looking at the building, and I think that's an important part of a building. What goes on in there? What is it? And this is just another stretch of Casota stone with, it's like putting together a Lego structure by just moving gables and windows and things around. And excuse me very much. I'm not. I would be in favor of seeing something that I think both of the architects on the commission said was not quite so safe. Was that it could even catch your eye as you are looking at it, rather than, oh yeah, it's St. Thomas. I recognize the administration's sort of caveat that the collegiate Gothic is what it needs to be. I expect the architects who are under a particular constraint because of that, but I think there are perhaps other options that might have been considered. And I'm trying to be nice, so I'm going to stop. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bazat. Commissioner Douglas, any discussion on this motion?
Yes. Well, I'm trying to think of what to say too. Just my personal comments, but although I like that the new facility is in keeping with what's existing. I mean, it's not something completely different. Although the original was very plain and simple and austere. I really like that, and now this is very Gothic. But then that's the design of the architecture on the campus. But I'm a graduate of St. Thomas. I got my master's in education not too long ago. But the campus in Minneapolis, it's like there's it's like the Capitol. It looks like the Sistine Chapel. There's I just remember standing in that hallway and looking up and seeing the paintings up there. And I don't know, I'm just wondering, where does that come from? Why was that? But having said that, I mean, it's beautiful. It's just very, I don't know, very, I don't even say traditional, just very Gothic.
Similar?
Yeah, but the other comment I wanted to make about the history we were discussing, and I hope too that the history of the priest, the African American priest who was at St. Peter Claver. I mean, I think that's very significant to St. Paul, and I do hope too that they do include that history and a plaque or something to represent what went on in the past. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Commissioner Wagner.
Yeah, just to be a little bit more specific, because I think, you know, when we talk, we sort of have feelings that we're trying to express that sometimes fail to have, you know, maybe concrete ideas behind it. And I think from my standpoint, you know, science, technology, engineering, the engineering part in particular, you look at this building and it's expressive of you know, engineering from you know, the
14th century.
12th century. And rather than saying anything about the 21st century. And so structure is what comes to mind for me, is that sort of spark of expression where all great buildings come from. And so to have a building suggest something about the capabilities of structural technology of its era is really at the foundation of what I'm talking about. You know, one might go back to something that Fay Jones did with some of his chapel designs, where certainly the Gothic inspired what he was doing, but by no means did he use stone or buttresses or, you know, load-bearing expressions to hold him back. He used, you know, very light wood and steel in his designs, in very new and sort of expressive, innovative ways to say something new about the notion that the Gothic architects of their time were trying to achieve, which was about trying to create buildings that were filled with the light of God. And so you know, in the 12th century, they only had a certain amount of technology, and they pushed it to the limits. And what I'm not seeing here is anyone testing any ideas. And hopefully, when I say these things, BWBR and Robert Stern don't feel criticized, but rather maybe emboldened to go back to their client and say, hey, you know what? We can do something much more expressive here. And now that we know that the HPC isn't going to shoot us down just because we're trying something new, because I think that's sometimes what happens with the HPC, is people put forward very, you know, palatable buildings because they think that, you know, we can't see beyond what's there. And so feel empowered, go do something, talk to one another, kick this around a little bit more, and maybe do something exciting. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you. I love hearing from the architects. But, you know, the wish that perhaps things were more imaginative. I get that. But we don't have any basis to say no to this design. So I'm going to support the motion. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner McDonald?
Yes. Yeah, I guess I don't think it reflects the 12th century. It probably more reflects Ralph Adams Cram in late 19th and early 20th century. But the only thing I would like to add is, in addition to some recognition of the early development of the campus on the interior, be it a plaque or some sort of exhibit, I guess I would like to see some recognition of the Cass Gilbert building that was on the site initially, as well on the interior. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. I have a couple of concerns about our discussion here today, and part of it was, I think, what Commissioner Nelson was getting to, and that is that, well, first of all, I mean, there's a very significant comments and questions about the design of the building and the architecture of the building that were not raised at the preliminary application. And so I'm a little concerned about them being raised now at this point. And secondly, you know, echoing what Commissioner Nelson said is, you know, I appreciate that architects can differ about the merits of a particular structure. Obviously, non-architects can do that as well. But I don't think it's our purview to sort of design the building we think it should be there. It's just the question is whether it meets the guidelines, and I think that it does. So I too will support the motion.
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Bazat.
Reflecting back on some of the previous comments, one of our favorite phrases is always differentiated but compatible. And this, the first thing that struck me about this building is that it's not differentiated. That's one of the things we always discuss when we look at new construction, so that it's clearly new construction. And you know, piggybacking off of Commissioner Wagner's comments regarding both what programs the building will hold, including engineering. There's no obvious structural, you know, the stone is no longer structural. So the current, you know, there are so many different materials that are currently used as structural materials that are visible, that, you know, are those bays structural steel, strip the stone off. You know, I recognize that we're not a design commission, but I think the comments are allowed because there was no, the preliminary design came at a time when there was still, you know, discussion about the former building on the site. And that was a big focus of a number of folks. But I think the aspect of differentiating this building as new construction is something that can be discussed, and I don't think it much of that I don't think much of that happened, and I think there could have been ways, and could probably still be ways, to modify it to reflect some of the current structural materials, as Commissioner Wagner noted, on the exterior, so that this building could be clearly new construction. So I'll stop.
Thank you, Commissioner Bazat. Commissioner Douglas, any further discussion on this motion?
I was thinking no, but you know, as a designer, I just think that any design, when you have several buildings, I think they should be very similar. And I think that from this, I know this is just a rendering, but I think that's important. I mean, I wouldn't want to see it, you know, it could be something very contemporary and to reflect what is going to take place inside the building. But just overall, my personal opinion, as a designer, I just think that this kind of does it for, you know, for what they had to work with, and the existing structures that are there. I think it kind of makes sense. I mean, the architects I know are seeing a lot of other things that could be done, and I'm sure still can be done. But I just kind of overall, from where they're at right now, I kind of think it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Commissioner Wagner, any further discussion on this motion?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Nelson.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. No, nothing further.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner McDonald.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion from the commissioners? If not, I will close deliberation at this point and call for a vote on the motion. Commissioner Bazat.
I vote
How do you
no.
vote?
I vote
Commissioner
no.
Douglas?
I vote
Commissioner
yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner McDonald?
No.
And let's see, what do we have? One here. 3-2. Well, I'll vote yes in case that's necessary. So I believe the motion passes. So thank you, Mr. Brenner and Mr. Fenton, and I'm sure staff will be in contact with you going forward on this project.
Yeah, thank you to the commission. We appreciate the vote of yes, and appreciate also the comments made.
Thank you. Then with that, our next item of business on the agenda is the HPC's third quarter discussion about cultural diversity and historic preservation. And I'll ask for the staff presentation on that.
Yes. So we did something a little different for this quarter's discussion. We compiled 3 readings which really center around cultural diversity and historic preservation. 2 of the articles give a perspective on current issues, and one offers a framework of strategy. So the first, entitled Cultural Diversity and Historic Preservation, this is a classic article. It's written in 1992, and it's held up all this time. It addresses the issue of cultural diversity from a historic preservation viewpoint. It offers some suggestions on approaches to layered cultural assets. The second is on architecture's colonial reckoning. So colonization is the forcible displacement of indigenous people from their land for purposes of expansion. Architecture has been a tool within that system. This article has several arguments concerning how to decolonize. And the third was a really interesting article, African American Historic Places Project, that it's an article about how the heritage and legacy of African Americans is not often reflected in the historic designation program of Los Angeles, California. And they are developing creative approaches to document those legacies through placemaking, identity, empowerment, and drawing upon community-based knowledge of lesser-known histories. So it's very interesting. I like that approach, and I thought maybe that's something that could be used here. So I had some questions for consideration to kind of spark the discussion. Are there stories of underrepresented communities that we should be exploring and developed for St. Paul? And what are those communities? How can we address the heritage of underrepresented peoples in St. Paul into our official historic designation program, similar to what Los Angeles is working to do? And how can we better recognize St. Paul's changing ethnic composition? I don't know if you've seen the latest on the census, but our census has changed, and we're moving towards a more centrist society of the true melting pot. So I will kick that off. Thoughts? We'll just have an open discussion.
Thank you, George. So with that, I think this is meant to be sort of an open, sort of informal discussion. So if anybody wants to jump in here with any thoughts or comments.
This is Commissioner Bazat. It was interesting to see the article on colonial, I can't remember the exact title, I got it up here, hang on. Colonial Reckoning. The Minnesota Society of Architectural Historians has just begun our own discussions about colonial reckoning and decolonized architecture. So it fit very well with the struggles that we have in interpreting architectural history in light of current knowledge about that history and how it reacts, how that sort of tension is manifested in preservation. So that was I actually forwarded it to the board of MNSA because it jives so well with the discussions that we're having.
Well, this is Commissioner Nelson. Since I'm the member of the HPC who's nominated by the Ramsey County Historical Society, it's appropriate for me to talk about this. If you look at the first question, are there stories of underrepresented communities that should be explored and developed for St. Paul? I mean, the obvious answer to this is yes, of course. Most history is never recorded and is lost. So should we have a more complete history of our city? Yes, we definitely should. You know, that leaves an awful lot of questions unanswered. I'm always puzzled when we talk about the HPC and the word stories comes up, because the HPC doesn't tell stories. I mean, maybe some stories are implied here and there, but we just don't tell stories. That's not what we do. That's not what our ordinance says we are supposed to do. So I'm puzzled about that. Question number 2, how can we address the heritages of unrepresented people in our official designated programs? George, perhaps you can answer this question for me. It's my understanding that we are under orders not to do any designations. Do I have that right?
No. Well, the commission can't do designations because you would have to recuse yourself, so we wouldn't have anybody that would be able to vote on the designation. But
well, I disagree with that completely. Advocacy of something is not a conflict of interest. To me, that is a complete misunderstanding of the nature of conflict of interest. Our ordinance says that we are supposed to recommend things to city council. But if our official position is we can't initiate anything, then all we can do is be passive. And I don't think that is what the ordinance imagines.
Yeah, the management team for city staff, they don't believe that we should be writing designations. They don't see that as our chore. I know city council definitely doesn't see that. After the St. Andrews, we were told very, very much that we need to do something about designations. I don't think that it's that we can't entertain designations, and if people want to do designations, that's fine. I think it just needs to be more of a community-based effort and not something coming from the commission itself. So, I mean, if a commissioner wants to go out into the community and talk to neighbors and we want to have that type of outreach, we can do that. And we're in a meeting where we don't have our city attorney's representative, and Allison's isn't here, who heads up most of the outreach for the office. So I maybe this is a question for our work plan next year. And our fourth quarter discussion will be the work plan and how we take some of the things we've been reading and listening to and how we put those into practice. So maybe it's a situation where we talk about adding something to the work plan, and I can schedule that meeting early enough in the fourth quarter that we can be talking to Noel Nix and some of the other folks over at the mayor's office to let them know and our leadership team in planning and economic development to make sure this is something that they are comfortable with. So I just know that after the St. Andrews designation, there was a general, we shouldn't be doing it. We need to be a very pure body that this comes to us and we review it and we're not involved with it. So
I beg to differ. I think that if that's the order that has come down from the mayor's office and the city council, I believe they're a bit off base. There was one member of the commission who recused themselves from any discussion or any interaction whatsoever with other members of the commission by virtue of doing the work that is done outside the commission as a profession. So to me, that issue should be irrelevant, and it's very unfortunate hearing about this. I will say that one of the first things that occurred to me when we got these writings, which are really quite good, and I had not encountered them before, so I was very glad to see them. But I feel that for I don't know how many years now, 1 year, 2 years, the commission has been reading and watching and listening and talking, and we haven't moved forward one bit. We had some priorities. That whole document that the HPC staff put together about priorities for surveys has the city, has PED, has staff had an opportunity to work on getting grants to have someone do those surveys. I'm thinking about Frogtown. At minimum, there needs to be a windshield survey, if not just a reconnaissance survey, before those fabulous homes disappear. And in here, it's too bad you can't see me. I got my fingers laced together. Conjoined with that, have conversations with, blend the efforts in getting underrepresented communities interested in preservation. We're definitely not, a face-to-face. We have not been face-to-face. Granted, there's COVID, but you can have face-to-face conversations on the street, on the sidewalks. And I don't see any reason why we can't have conversations with, for instance, the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, so that renovating, rehabilitating, repairing properties that are likely to be historic or potentially eligible for designation doing that work would not displace the current homeowners. And to me, of all of these conversations about underrepresented communities, that is the big deal. Preservation is still seen as gentrification. Just like that big sign, that big mural, or the big sign on the side of that store at University in Dale that said development without displacement. I think there shouldn't be a reason for us not to partner in these discussions with funding sources so that the preservation efforts can move forward without destroying the communities. So I'm at a very high level of frustration with not being able to see a way forward for the commission to push to have some of these things done, like the surveys, which cost money, so they'll need grants. And then once properties have been determined to potentially be eligible, move forward with how to make that happen. You see so much of this stuff across the country where the preservation commissions work with neighborhood organizations, and both are moving forward in the same direction with the same goals. So all of that gets wrapped into these readings about preservation and unrepresented communities, and almost all of it does get driven by the communities, but I think the commission needs to be seen as supporting those efforts. So I'm all for some action.
This is Commissioner Douglas. So I just wanted to say that, I mean, this is huge, but I think that the discussion is about historic places. And I think, I mean, you know, I'm prejudiced, but I'm from the Rondo neighborhood, and I think that the history is so vast and for over 100 years. And it's, you know, I just think this is a perfect example of, and just reading the article from the Los Angeles African American Historic Places Project, I was so excited because I thought, oh my goodness, we should copy that for the Rondo neighborhood. And, you know, we did the African American context study, and, you know, we stopped there, and it was just for a certain period of time, and we need to go forward and do the complete history. And, you know, and it's to preserve not only the story, but there are a lot of historic places that have been destroyed and, you know, no longer exist, but then there are some that still exist. And if they're not designated historic places, then they will disappear too.
Exactly.
And I'm afraid, yes, I'm afraid that my neighborhood, you know, I always say I'm a child of Rondo. I was born and raised in the Rondo neighborhood, and it's disappearing. And talk about gentrification, you know, a lot of other people are moving in, and it's just not the same old neighborhood anymore. And then there's along with that, the Rondo Inc. or I know you all have heard about the land bridge that they want to put back in the Rondo neighborhood. And, you know, and these are things for the future. And it's just, I know a lot of people who are interested in that we're just afraid that the whole neighborhood is just going to disappear.
Exactly.
Right. And that's what history is all about. We have to preserve the history. So, and I think that, you know, historic preservation, I mean, that's who we are. That's what we're all about. So I think it ties in perfectly. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yay. I agree.
Well, one thing, this is Carrie Kimker. One thing, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but maybe I could refine this concept a little bit more, and that is the idea of having the commissioner go out, the commissions, or the commissioners, I guess, go out into the communities and meet with some of these underrepresented communities. And maybe it could be sort of an informational session. It could be, you know, here's what the HPC does. Here's what there's this designation process. How do you do that? What does it mean? What are the potential benefits of designation to a particular site? And you know, maybe, you know, I could see meeting with representatives from the Rondo neighborhood. We can meet with representatives from the West Side. We can meet with representatives. I mean, there's unlimited numbers we could, you know, the Hmong population. And, you know, maybe we could drum up some, I mean, I think it's a little bit difficult for us just to say, well, we want the communities to bring it forward, when I don't know what the level of education is within those communities about what historic preservation is and how it might benefit them. And so I would encourage, whenever we get through our little COVID life here, that if we could actually go out and meet with people and kind of have more learning and listening sessions about designations of sites or buildings that are important to these various communities that are underrepresented.
You know, Terry, one of the things I think that we haven't been good at is that it seems like we don't have goals for next steps when we have these community meetings. You know, when we did all those listening sessions in the various neighborhoods with popsicles, as I recall, that was the most fun one because people were really open and talking to us. You know, positive and negative stuff about their sense of Dayton's Bluff and preservation. And but I think that the meetings are the starting place, but we end the meetings with some next step ideas. You know, how do we go about? So we have a meeting in Frogtown, and how do we? I mean, you know, my daughter lives in a house that was built in 1908, right off University and Dale, And so I drive around the neighborhood every time I go to see her and her husband and there's so much cool stuff there, and people are still living these fabulous old brick workers' cottages, narrow, 2 stories tall. And my sense is that if we could tie in, and I'm going to get back to the funding, but it is a huge deal to both persuade folks that preservation does not mean gentrification, or does not have to mean it, and how you stay in your neighborhood. And here are going to be some people at our next meeting who can talk about funding sources. So the first step is education. The next step is bricks and mortar and money, to persuade people to inspire people, rather, to think about things in those terms. That this is an important building. It's been around for 150 years, and it's gorgeous. We think it's gorgeous. And as a result, because of its history, it is historic, and you live in it. And here's how the next steps, here's how you can fix it up. I'm going to try to get off my soapbox here. I apologize. I'm muting the microphone.
This is Commissioner McDonald. In general, I'm in agreement with a lot that was said in these articles, but just to bring a little bit of practicality to it as a working architect, and also as it potentially reflects the guidelines we already have. In the last article, there was a brief discussion about what period do you restore a building to? And we face that a lot. Let's say we're dealing with an 1850s Greek revival building that was Victorianized in the later part of the century, and then let's say an ethnic community remodeled it and changed it. What's the period of significance? And often in the National Register nomination, it defines a specific date or period that you need to adhere to in terms of what you do, in terms of grants and tax credits and all sorts of things. So one option we have taken in the past is to leave parts of the building uncovered and restore the rest to the earlier period. It can get rather extreme. When I was in graduate school in the early 70s, I'm dating myself, the Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquities shifted their rationale, and they were no longer promoting restoring buildings to their earlier original construction, but then saying that everything that happens to a building is historic and we should preserve it as we find it. I don't doubt their philosophical underpinnings, but I think it was also in part they didn't have money to restore them. So I think there's some really practical considerations that are going to affect our published guidelines, and they may need revision if we decide to change the rationale for what's considered historic and what isn't. So that's all I got.
This is Commissioner Nelson again. I'd like to get back to what I think is the key, the most important of these 3 questions, which is number 2. How can we do better? And we have basically one tool, and that's designation. If we don't do designations, we're not really doing much of anything. We're certainly not expanding our reach. And to hear that the official view of our duties is to be passive is very disappointing. It's not surprising. It's very disappointing. I'd like to refer to the ordinance that defines the powers of the HPC, 73.04, number 3, designation of sites. The commission shall recommend to the mayor and city council. Now, in statutory language, shall means that's an order. You must. The ordinance does not say, wait and see if somebody comes to do this. That's not what it says. Number two is, the commissioner shall conduct a continuing survey. Shall means must. So what we have now is a situation where we have two shalls, but we don't do either of them. Apparently, city leadership doesn't want us to do these things, but that's in contravention of the ordinances that created the HPC. So, could we do a lot more to represent, to recognize underrepresented people of St. Paul? Yes, we could, but the only way we have power to do it is by designations. And to go out and have meetings to talk to underrepresented communities about historic preservation and then not be able to say, okay, and we will support you. We will go forward and take the lead in designating places is to waste people's time. That's all I have.
I think one of the things, this is Commissioner Bazat, I think one of the things that's really important, well, one of the things I found, I highlighted it when I read the article on the African-American Getty thing. Hang on, I've got it. They've been very specific about what they call building a new framework around 9 themes: civil rights, deed restriction and segregation, religion and spirituality, social clubs and organization, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they talk about deeper citywide community engagement because they have specifics about their project. And harking back to what Commissioner Douglas said about the African American context study, it's a gold mine, and it's not really answering Commissioner McDonald's statement about things like the period of designation, but Rondo has a pretty decent beginning and end time. I mean, it was gradual from the time people began to live there, and there was a peak time during which it was a super active, intense community. And it's really well covered in the African American context study, because I went back to that after I read that one article, and it gets specific about sites. Rather perhaps than having a neighborhood designation, you have an African American cultural context designation, and you call out specific buildings that were important to that community. And there's a fairly decent amount that are still standing. So the context period is the liveliness of Rondo, if you put it. So I think there are some communities for which that wouldn't be horrifically difficult, such as the West Side Flats, although there are only about 3 buildings left, including Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, which isn't even the original church, but Torre San Miguel is a little older. So there are important people from within that community, and I only know this because of a summer-long project I did on migrant workers, and I actually got to meet Sister Giovanni, who was this amazing mover and shaker from that particular congregation. So I think there's a wealth of both cultural studies and of potential resources and even buildings around which some of these designations could potentially happen, but we don't know because there haven't been any surveys. And I think in order to fit our CLG status, we need to be doing these surveys in order to maintain the status. We've got them listed. Again, George, is anybody pushing to do like a CLG grant or a legacy grant within the
We're
city?
not going to do any grants because we have to ask permission of city council to do it. And if we get the grant, then we have to ask permission of city council to accept the grant. It has to go through procurement. It has to be there's an RFP that goes out.
But
And we
isn't
found
this,
out that for a 1-year grant, it takes 6 months for us to process it. So we have asked for grant money to be put in. But I will say, commissioners, we have plenty of surveys out there that we've already done that talk about communities and things. And perhaps we need to be going through the ones we already have done.
absolutely.
Start looking at those.
So off the top of your head, what are those?
The surveys we've already done.
On which, nothing has really moved towards any designation or something.
Well, we have Frogtown, and we identified an area in Frogtown, and there was outreach to the folks in Frogtown, which they said, no, thank you, we don't want to be designated.
Well,
so we need to have folks, we need to be having conversations with folks and outreach. This is some of what Allison's been trying to do with the St. Paul stories, to show people what preservation is and how it all fits together, instead of it being a bunch of scary stories that you have to come to a commission meeting and we're not going to let you do what you want to do. And tell and show the positivity of it, and show how a beautiful building like some of the Pioneer Endicott gets saved because that building was a nothing for a long time. See, it all is hand in hand. It's not just designation. Denver had 50 historic districts designated, and there was a lot of negativity towards that because it was looked at as government overreach just to come in and tell you what to do. And
and the whole gentrification issue, as soon as it gets designated, then the rich people want to buy it up.
Exactly.
But here's part of the problem that I have been trying to do research on these surveys. You can't find them anywhere because the city has decided they're not going to create links to the PDFs of these things. I mean, it's nearly impossible to just find the design guidelines for some of these neighborhoods, though I've got them. You have to luck out when you do a Google search, which is really not how we should find them. I would very much like to see a copy of the Frogtown survey.
I know there is a survey of the Rondo community, because I've seen it with the connected to the African American context study. Now, I don't know where it is now, or if it was connected and you could find it online, but I know it does exist. But, I was just thinking there are organizations that are working on these things and doing surveys and things, and perhaps our organization could support those organizations. I know there's a Rondo roundtable, and I know I think they're in the process or thinking about doing more with the context study and going further. So, just perhaps that could be what we could essentially, like George is saying, that, there's so many barriers to what we can do, but perhaps just supporting other organizations that can get those grants and things. Maybe that would be a solution.
There's also an LGBTQ plus survey that's in the early works. So there are other things out there. We're a bit isolated with COVID, that we can't go out and meet and have actual meetings. We've also staff has asked for money to be put in the annual budget. We want an item of funds every year put in for survey. But when especially now with COVID-19 and people that have been laid off and things, it's tough we have someone that is struggling to pay their mortgage, and we're going to ask for $65,000 to $75,000 to do a survey of an area. That's a tough sell for city council. They're trying to find money to help people. So I realize, yes, there are things in our ordinance that says that we have to do, but it's very difficult to do some of those things. And CLG and legacy grants, we're the capital city, and I've talked to my person in Minneapolis as well, that she has also said that it's a struggle for us to get grants because ACS is the big city. We should have plenty of money. And they're looking at small communities like Anoka or Blaine or Bemidji, that don't have the money to do things, and we have historic resources there to try to protect as well. So I get it. It is very frustrating, but we got to try to do outreach and go from that direction and see if we can't get some community members interested and partner with them, just like Commissioner Douglas has said.
And, just speaking of money, I know, well, this summer my organization had a meeting with Tina Smith's staff actually. And, we were asking for money, different ways that we could come up with money for our organization. And I remember that same week that on the news, it was the Minnesota Congress, weren't they fighting over trying to figure out what to do with the $52 billion surplus that we have in Minnesota? And so I was asking Tina Smith's staff, I said, why can't we get some of that money? So where is all that money going or gone? And, we're the HPC. Why can't we get some of that money? Just saying.
Keep bugging her.
Okay, seems like this was a good discussion. Any further comments or thoughts? If not, if there's no further agenda business, George, one question I have, which has nothing to do with this discussion, but are we still planning on being back live next month?
So far, the plan is the September 20th meeting, which will be our first meeting next September, will be in city council chambers.
Okay.
Now, I will say that there has been on Friday, the Planning Commission voted not to return to in-person meetings because of concerns over the Delta variant of COVID. And the Board of Zoning Adjustment has also voted not to return. Boards and commissions really don't get a vote. It's up to the mayor. So that has been forwarded to the mayor, and they're going to make a decision about the open meetings law for Minnesota and being in person and things like that. So we're just waiting to hear what that decision is going to be.
Okay, thanks. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Barb has her hand up.
Oh, I'm just on my phone, so I can't see that. So
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say I would probably vote against in-person meetings even as late as September, because I'm back to masking everywhere. And they're saying that I've seen a bunch of stuff that is looking forward to December, January as things possibly calming down, but I don't know. I just think we should keep our eye on it.
Mrs. Nelson, so moved.
thank you, Commissioner Nelson.
This is
How about
Bazat. I
second that
second.
motion? Commissioner Bazat, any opposition to that motion? If not, we are adjourned, and we'll keep waiting to hear what's going to happen for our next meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, Terry, good job.